And if this is your first time giving your mind a little love, I have a few goodies for you. First, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And second, sign up for the Morning Mind Love. Think of it like a weekday oracle from your highest self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, you'll get 2 gifts absolutely free: a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up. Welcome to Mind Love, episode 335. Today's episode is all about body-focused stress relief strategies for navigating overwhelm.
I found that as soon as I slowed down in my 30s, late 30s and 40s, that I had trouble managing stress. Really, the goal is to allow yourself to realize that the way the brain and the body work together, when you are responding to something, you're generally responding to something that happened in the past because your brain is predicting what's going on in the body. And that can cause a lot of stuck patterns. And so for me, I became sensitive to adrenaline because I had had so much of it in my body. And as I started to slow down and actually embody and be in my body, that feeling became too much. And so I had to decipher and distinguish between, are these feelings a threat or are these just uncomfortable feelings trying to tell me something?
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to earn some positive karma today, please leave a 5-star review. You have no idea how much these mean to me. Seriously fuels me for the whole week. Today, I'm going to share a review from Maggie Helena that I just can't stop reading. She says, I've been listening to Mind Love for almost 5 years, and it's literally the only podcast I've stayed with this long. Giving my mind love each day has changed my life. Melissa's voice is so soothing, and I love how she gets involved in the convo instead of just firing off questions like a robot. I don't think people realize how much of an art that is. Plus, her insights are always just as valuable as her guests. She makes my journey of growth feel less lonely. So thanks, Melissa. Maggie, I'm assuming that's your name. Thank you so much. I've probably read this 100 times. It really does mean a lot. And now let's get to it. Do you ever reflect on something that happened and think, why the hell did I just do that? Or why can't I seem to keep my cool in those situations? Or why does that always trigger me so badly? If you're nodding along with me, the good news is you're about a mile ahead of the average person. Here's a funny little thing that our brain likes to do. No matter how badly we react, it likes to find reasons that we're right. We don't like to believe that we react illogically. So after the fact, your brain will come up with all sorts of stories as to why your reaction was justified. The truth is, your reaction is less about the trigger and more about your past. Our past experiences leave invisible imprints on our lives. They affect the way we interact with the world, make decisions, and even respond to stress, which has a direct effect on our happiness levels now. I've uncovered so many of these little wounds that drive my life, and the wild part is sometimes the root is something seemingly insignificant. Too many because I said so's as a kid can lead to us being overly compliant to authority, or even the opposite, lead us to being a little rebellious. Enter me. Or growing up in a household with a lot of yelling can lead you to avoiding conflict at all costs. Or becoming overly responsible for other people's emotions while neglecting your own needs. Being teased in grade school has long-term impacts on self-esteem and trust. Having a parent that's emotionally unavailable can lead to attachment issues. The thing is, if we aren't aware of how our brains work, we'll believe it's little games. When it comes up with 43 reasons why we were perfectly right to explode on that customer service rep, we deepen that neural pathway and make the impulse even stronger next time. Or we can expect it. There's that narrator again, thanks for taking my side, but I need growth and nervous system regulation more than I need righteousness right now. And that gives us space to consciously change our patterns. So today we're learning all about that process and what to do next. Our guest is Chantal Donnelly. She's a physical therapist and author of the Amazon best-selling book, Settled: How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. She's also the owner of Body Insight, a wellness company designed to help people reconnect with their bodies and improve their health. So 3 key things we will learn are how stress hijacks your body's responses and why even your mind can't save you from it, how to hit pause and rewrite your survival patterns, and how to master the art of reaching calm between the seesaw of stress and shutdown. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Can we talk about how overwhelming wellness advice has become? Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes, morning routines. It just feels like there's advice for everything these days. But how do you know what actually works for you? I've been down that rabbit hole, trying every new trend, buying every new course, following every guru, and it is exhausting. And honestly, a lot of it just added more noise to my life. With all the information overload about mental health and wellness, it can be a real struggle to know what's true and what actions to take. That's where talking to actual professionals comes in. Therapy helps you cut through all that noise and figure out what you actually need, not what some influencer is selling, but what works for your specific situation. It can teach you how to set boundaries, trust your own judgment, and be the best version of yourself. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists. They have a rating of 4.9 from 1.7 million reviews, and you can join a session at the click of a button and switch therapists anytime if it's not the right fit. Instead of drowning in generic advice, you get personalized recommendations from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Can we talk about back to school chaos for a second? The kids are getting back into routines, everyone's schedules are crazy, and suddenly you're supposed to have dinner on the table every night like some kind of magician. But want to know what I figured out? Shopping, planning, and cooking food really can be simple and stress-free, which is why I love Hungry Root. Hungry Root takes the stress out of mealtime by filling your cart with personalized picks and planning your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. With over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, many ready in just 15 minutes or less, it's a huge lifesaver on those busy weeknights. I personally love their Smart Cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements tailored to my tastes and needs. Plus, I love the kids' snack section where I get these really easy snacks to just keep in the car or throw in our to-go bags or lunch boxes for those of you who need them. They screen out over 200 additives, including high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. They only source high-quality meat and seafood with no hormones or antibiotics, and they carry trusted brands like Oatly and Vital Farms. The time that I have gotten back has been incredible. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE. And now let's welcome Chantal Donnelly to the show.
Thank you.
So what inspired you to understand stress better?
I was working with my patients as a physical therapist. I'd been working probably for about 18 years at that point as a PT, private practice, and I started getting frustrated because what I was finding is that about 70 to 80% of my patients were getting better on my table, but were going back to their lives, whether it was a stressful job, stressful relationship, whatever stress it was that they were dealing with. And that was bringing their inflammation and pain back. And I felt like I was hitting a wall. And so I just felt like if I'm really going to help my patients fully, entirely, I need to look into this stress thing. And then at the same time, I was a ball of stress. I was going through a whole lot of stress myself. And I wasn't finding that the things that normally, the things that we talk about helping stress, self-care and mindset and thinking positively and meditation, that wasn't working for me. And so I was looking for answers, and I found it looking at the science of stress, and I found it for my patients and found it for myself.
You say that stress is often approached as a mental issue rather than a physical one, even though it's a deeply physical thing. What insight does that give you? Why is that important?
When we're under a lot of stress, it's a biological reaction. We know that stress is in the body. And when we're trying to mindset our way out of it and, don't be so stressed out, and we sort of pathologize being stressed, first of all, and then we try to talk our way out of it. And the analogy I usually give is that that's similar to trying to calm a toddler down who's in the middle of a tantrum, right? And it's trying to reason with them. And you're trying to reason with your brain using mindset. And it doesn't work, just like it doesn't work to try to reason with a toddler having a tantrum. They can't hear you. They're not taking in what you're saying. It's the same thing when we're having a stress response. Because it's in the body, we have to talk to the body to get to the brain.
It's so interesting because lately, actually, it's been a couple years now, I feel like whenever I'm in alignment, or maybe it's just as I'm evolving, I have a question for the universe and it seems to deliver it within like an hour. Well, the last couple weeks, my husband and toddler were out of town and it was just me and my baby. And I felt like I was on a wellness retreat. I vowed to not watch any TV. I was only listening to mindset things. I was doing breath work every day, meditating like 5 times a day. I was just on this high, my sauna blanket. And then they come home and I was like, oh yeah, back to reality. This is a lot. But it's still going fine, still keeping my practices. And then daylight savings time just happened. And I don't do well when I'm sleep deprived. And I was just angry because I spent like 3 months trying to get my baby to wake up closer to 6 instead of 5. And I finally got him there. And then stupid daylight savings time happens. And it just makes me angry because I'm like, we voted against this. The bill passed. Why are we still doing it? Like, we know it's horrible for our bodies. Why is this here? So I was adding to the story, obviously. But the stress was so intense. Like I kept saying to my husband, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I want to punch somebody and also throw up at the same time. What's going on? And when I was going through your book, I was wondering, maybe it's that I've now developed so much body awareness and now I'm in this like weird in between of like, okay, how do I handle this? But you're right. I was sitting there trying to do the mindset stuff and it didn't work. So I actually, it was like, maybe I need to listen to this needing to punch something. So I went and just like punched a pillow and then like hugged my husband. And I know it was the reasoning of where the stress came from. It just seemed so incongruent, but I was like, whatever this is, there's energy that needs to be released and I'm going to just follow this flow. But I was just wondering, like at first I kind of went through 5 minutes of beating myself up. Like I should be better at this. Like, why is this happening? And then I'm like, no, I know that doesn't help me. I will give myself credit that I don't have those responses very often. And I'm fairly good at handling stress now, but there was just something very odd about this like overwhelming feeling of emotion right in the pit of my stomach. So I'm glad to be talking to you because I'm like, oh my God, I feel like she can answer all my questions. Help me through this. What is going on with me?
Yeah, sleep is, it's funny going back to the toddlers and the babies. What do we do as parents? We worry about whether our kid has gotten a nap, whether our child has slept enough, had enough to eat, had good, healthy food, not thirsty, has had enough time outdoors running around. And if that child is overstimulated, had enough time alone and in quiet, right? So we do all of that, not to improve our child's longevity, but to improve their resilience and their ability to regulate. And we don't do it for ourselves, or we're forced not to because of daylight savings time, right? And it messes with us. But those are the basics: sleep, hydration, good food, some alone time, and some outdoor time and social time. So all those things that we worry about for our toddler, we should be worrying about for ourselves. And it's the basics. If you don't get that, it's what Lisa Feldman Barrett calls your body budget. And if your body budget is out of alignment, your stress response will be out of alignment. It will create a stress response. And that's exactly what happened to you. And yes, I think all of the work that you've been doing has probably made you more, what scientists call it, introception. I call it your soul speak. So your introception is fairly accurate and strong right now. You have a really good sense of your body and your body's sensations and internal workings. And when you don't get enough sleep, you feel it now more, right? You feel it in your body and you feel that stress response. And luckily, you talked yourself out of that shame spiral that often happens when people try the mindset and it doesn't work, because your body was having a bit of a tantrum about the time change. And I'm right there with you. I have the same problem. Your body was having a bit of a tantrum. And so it wasn't going to listen to the mindset piece, at least not in that moment. And so you chose to do a somatic body up tool, and it worked for you a little bit by the sounds of it. It helped a little bit. And that's what you want to have in your toolbox. I'm not saying that mindset doesn't work. I'm not saying meditation doesn't work. I do all of that stuff. But I'm saying that we're often missing as a society this body up piece. We tend to prioritize cognition and our minds. So we do a lot of brain down type tools, psychology and positive thinking and all of that. And we tend to shy away from the body up tools. And I think if we do both of them, sometimes it's just the body up that needs to happen first, and then the brain can get back online, and then you can do the mindset piece. And when you bring those two together, I really feel that that's part of the realignment and the balance that we're all looking for.
You talk about how stress responses are natural and adaptive. And that's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people are viewing stress as, because they're like, oh my gosh, it's this negative thing that I need to learn how to calm, and my goal is to be in a perpetual state of calm. So what should we know about that?
Stress is adaptive in that it is trying to help you. And in the acute phase, meaning if you have a stressor that is short term, let's say child falls out of tree, breaks arm, have to take your child to the emergency room, that's an acute stress. And you need that stress response to mobilize you, to keep you focused, and to get your child to the hospital, right? And during that process, your immune system boosts. The cortisol that's released is anti-inflammatory. So you're being set up to succeed in a crisis situation. Now, what happens is that we humans tend to get stuck. We get stuck in patterns of stress. We get stuck in fight, flight, and survival mode. And we also get stuck in freeze and collapse at times. And it's that stuck piece that's not quite so healthy. And so people have a hard time knowing if their stress is still helping them or not, because there are times when we need stress. And it doesn't have to be a crisis like getting someone to a hospital. It can just be dealing with an email. I need a little bit of fight, flight, nervous system activation to talk to you on a podcast. Otherwise, I would be rather flat, right? I need a little bit of that alertness and that drive and motivation that your nervous system gives you, specifically your sympathetic nervous system in that case.
There's so many signals from my body that I'm like, I wish you weren't here, but if it wasn't there, then what would I be listening to? And I would just be going on with my typical day. I wouldn't realize maybe, oh, I need a little bit more sleep. I wouldn't realize maybe I need to punch a pillow, which, by the way, is not normally something I do. I'm not like an aggressive person, so it was just so odd. And I even told my husband, because my husband grabbed me by the shoulders and he's like, you're a badass. You have this day. Time is an illusion anyway. days. Like, and it was also very odd. I don't know. We all reacted to it like the opposite. Like my toddler slept longer to where he would have, I don't know. Everything was very weird. My newborn ended up falling asleep right after he woke up. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Time is an illusion. And my children are here to show me because this doesn't make sense. But you had talked about your personal story of developing a hypersensitivity to stress. How did this shape your approach to developing the strategies that you present in your book?
Yeah, I was pretty hard charging, kind of a high achiever. And I found that as soon as I slowed down in my 30s, late 30s and 40s, that I had trouble managing stress. And I think similar to what you're experiencing, I just started feeling more in my body and the sensations were super uncomfortable. And so really the goal with all of the things that I share in my book is to allow yourself to realize that the way the brain and the body work together, when you are responding to something, you're generally responding to something that happened in the past because your brain is predicting what's going on in the body. And that can cause a lot of stuck patterns. And so for me, I became sensitive to adrenaline because I had had so much of it in my body. And as I started to slow down and actually embody and be in my body, that feeling became too much. And so I had to decipher and distinguish between, are these feelings a threat or are these just uncomfortable feelings trying to tell me something? That piece, on top of this piece of knowing that what I was responding to was probably something in my past, because that's all my brain really has to go on and interpret. Those two pieces together really were a game changer for me and allowed me to change my approach to stress and my approach to settling my nervous system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is what I'm going through. It's like, oh, I want to be so in tune with my body. And now I'm like, hold up, this is what you feel like inside? Slow down. And so like these little nuances, I'm like constantly like, what's going on here? I'm like, wait, no, don't add to the story. Like just dissipate it. But it's been a lot. So I'm hoping that ends up evening itself out a little bit.
Well, a lot of the body-based tools are going to help you build more capacity to hold those sensations so they won't feel as big in your body, right? It's like you're going to grow, the sensations are going to stay the same size. So your capacity and ability to regulate you're not going to feel like they're as big after a while.
Perfect. I need the light at the end of the tunnel here.
Yeah.
Plus I'm very prone to, I'm just highly sensitive with both emotions and physical sensations, like wearing the wrong clothes. I'll be like, I can just feel it rubbing my bicep too much. I need to change my shirt. Like it's a lot. And so it has been a whole adaptation of having children. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, how am I doing this? Like they're climbing all over me. This would be my nightmare. Before I had kids, my biggest struggle was wearing lip gloss on a windy day. It's like just way too much tickles. I'm like, why are you stuck there?
Well, really, you should honor yourself because a lot of people, when they become moms, a lot of women, when they become moms, dissociate because it is so much. And you being a sensitive person and sensitive to tactile things and possibly noise too, I don't know. The fact that you are so embodied is actually amazing because generally you would want to dissociate to protect yourself and you've chosen not to do that. And that's a sound choice in the long run.
Thank you. I needed that. I don't think my husband would agree, given that he's not allowed to watch football because I don't like the crowd noises mixed with the announcers and the music and the honks. So, so good to know.
Sorry, husband.
Well, one of the concepts that you talk about that is super fascinating to me is this idea about when the mind and the body miscommunicate. When does that happen and how can we tell?
Going back to when I was talking about how the brain's job is to predict what's going on in the body. And it predicts it using data points from the past, because that's all the brain has to go on. It's kind of in this dark place and this shell of a skull that we have. It doesn't really know what's going on. It's only getting various information from the body. And so it tries to predict if we are safe or not safe. and it tries to predict if it needs to do anything to help our homeostasis. So that's where a lot of what I call miscommunication glitches happen between the brain and the body. I think maybe a tangible example might be helpful here. So in the book, I talk about a client I had named Jasmine. And Jasmine had just gotten through a really ugly divorce. And during the divorce, while her husband was still living in her home, there was a lot of fights. They became rather aggressive. There was some throwing of objects and lots of nasty words going back and forth. And so when she was in that fight mode, there was a lot of adrenaline and cortisol being released, as there should be, right? So that's an appropriate time to have a stress response. And so she came to me, she did a couple of my workshops and the tools were really helping her, but she came to me and she said, I have this one problem. When I start to do the dishes or vacuum or work out, I think I'm doing better. And as soon as I start doing those things, all of the feelings come flooding back and I start thinking all the negative thoughts again. And I basically just want to go to bed or eat a pint of ice cream. So I asked her, I said, well, basically she was explaining to me that she was starting to have a little bit of panic attack, right? Is what was happening a little bit. There was some anxiety coming up, even though she was now in a safe place. Her husband had moved out of the house. And I said, does any of that happen when you're sitting, say, reading a book or doing homework with your daughter, just chilling out at home, sitting on the couch? Does it happen then? And she looked at me and she was like, it's really weird. No, it only happens when I'm doing the stuff that I told you. So I said, oh, it only happens when you're moving. So what was happening with Jasmine is that she had become fairly sensitive to the release of adrenaline during the altercations with her husband. And when she was doing the dishes or vacuuming or working out, your body releases the same chemical hormones that it releases when you're under stress, but it releases it in order to give you some oomph to move, to get blood to the muscles and to do the dishes or to work out. And her brain was predicting, oh, the last time my heart rate increased and there was this adrenaline release and my breath became shallow and I was standing at this window doing the dishes, I was having a big old fight with my husband. So her brain was confusing movement, particularly in her home where the fighting had occurred, with a fight with her husband. That is a brain-body miscommunication glitch. It's an overcoupling of two things that shouldn't be coupled together.
That is fascinating. I have something similar. It might be a little more mild, but I had a really horrible relationship in which we were at casinos all the time. I was living in Palm Desert at the time, and he was a gambling addict, among other things. And we spent a lot of time in casinos. And now to this day, I've gone to a bachelorette party and Vegas with friends back in my drinking days. And when I would even just walk through, I'm like, oh, I could just hang out with my cousin. I'll go on a penny slot. And my heart would just start pounding like crazy. And I immediately recognized it. I'm like, well, what's this coming from? Clearly I don't do well in casinos. I feel like I have some sort of PTSD. Is that what that would be considered? That overcoupling? Is it like a form of PTSD?
Yeah, it would be a form of CPTSD, complex PTSD, which, because it wasn't just one incident with you, it was several incidents. And really, any little T trauma, as it's often called, can cause a miscommunication glitch. I have seen it with people who are just reading the newspaper, and it's not even a situation in which they necessarily relate to, but there's something about a victim that they're reading about in the newspaper that can cause them to, it's almost like they think that whatever happened to that person who's in the news has happened to them, and they start to have a physical reaction. It can be, I call that empathic confusion. So yeah, it can be PTSD, it can be CPTSD, and it can be little traumas that you may not even recognize consciously as something that you're dealing with. It's more common than you would think.
So we're talking about stress, and stress is kind of a way to that our body communicates with us. But another thing I want to touch on before we get into some of the ways to heal is In your book, you say that stress itself isn't necessarily the issue. It's the inability to move out of a stress response that's problematic. And that is fascinating because you're right. Like, animals don't get stuck in defensive states. I remember learning about how, like, often if you see a deer running away from a lion, do lions chase deers?
They do, I think.
Or gazelle, I don't know. But then afterwards, they like kind of kick up their whole body and they flail around. And so I remember trying that for a while and I forgot it until just now. Just like moving that energy. I'd like go on a run or something like that. So how do we approach that, or how do we know if we're actually getting stuck in that stress response? Because I feel like a lot of people, they deal with stress the way they deal with stress, or stress affects them the way it affects them, and it has been for a while, and they don't even really know what that normal barometer is.
So you are right. We should be moving in and out of stress and relaxation. And that's the way we are designed. However, for some reason, a lot of humans get stuck, and we can get into what those reasons are, but I think our mind has a big part to do with it. You know when you are stuck when you start to experience what's called allostatic load. And allostatic load is all of the stuff that when you go to the doctor and the doctor says you need to deal with your stress, it's that stuff. It's the insomnia. It's possibly weight gain for some people or weight loss for other people. It is aches and pains that move around and that have no real mechanism of injury involved with them. Headaches, neck pain are common, stomach problems, digestion issues. All of these things are the body's way of saying that they need to relax and that the nervous system is not allowing that to happen. And so all of that stuff doesn't necessarily need to happen if we can find ways to move out of that constant survival mode, essentially is what it is.
A lot of people listening to this show might have enough awareness if they've been listening for a while that it's like, okay, I've gone through something big, traumatic, mildly traumatic even, so I might have some remnants of this in my body. And so if they're getting overstressed, it might be like, okay, I've got to deal with this thing from this ex or my childhood or whatever. But there's also the idea of transgenerational stress, which is fascinating. And so for these people, maybe it's like, I haven't really been through anything, but maybe somebody else has. Tell us how that actually happens.
Yeah, so there's some really amazing research done on transgenerational stress. And basically, they looked at people who were in the Holocaust and they looked at their offspring, not only their children, but their grandchildren. And what they found is that there is some epigenetic changes. I think your listeners probably know what that is, but I'll explain it. Some changes in the way that the DNA is representing itself. It's either on or off. So there's been some changes in DNA expression in the children and grandchildren of these Holocaust survivors as a result of the trauma that they experienced. And what they're finding is that the receptors where cortisol, your stress hormone, goes to in the body, those receptors become more pronounced and more sensitive. So you can have a little bit of cortisol and feel it a lot in your body. And that can be not from something that you've experienced, but something that your grandmother experienced. And that doesn't have to just be genocide. It can be racism. It can be famine. It can be any kind of big stressor like that, war. All of those types of things can be basically genetically handed down. The good news is that that doesn't have to be permanent. There are ways that you can rewire the nervous system to be able to, again, gain that increased capacity to manage those uncomfortable feelings.
So rewiring is what I want to talk about next, because it seems to be coming from all different angles, whether you're in a situation like me where now I wished to have more body awareness, and now I'm feeling just so much. or whether you've gone through something traumatic, whether you've inherited these things. So, what is step one to learning to kind of rewire this process?
I think step one is don't pathologize what you're going through. Don't pathologize the stress. So if you feel the stress, if you're feeling uncomfortable in your body, that doesn't make you a bad person and that doesn't make you weak. There's a lot of our cultural messages that seem to suggest that if you feel bad feelings, and I use bad in quotation marks, that there's something wrong with you, that there's a weakness. And that's not true. We're all designed to feel stress. So that's number one. Number two would be, and this is going to sound counterintuitive for what you're going through, but number two would be to connect with your body, because you won't know where you are in your nervous system. You won't know if you're relaxed, whether you're in fight, flight, or freeze, if you can't feel what's going on in your body. And it's amazing how many people, for very good protective reasons, have dissociated from their bodies, because that's the only way that they can get through. But what we're finding is that in the long term, that's detrimental to their health.
That makes a lot of sense, because that is the background I came from. I went through multiple traumas in my teens, and then I developed a very severe eating disorder, and I was just cutting off any signals from my body to my mind at all. And so that's why it's been my goal to develop that connection with my body. And it's something that I've been working on for 12 years now. And so that's why I'm like, too much. But to be fair, it was not some extended period of time. Like, this is just what I dealt with this morning. I'm like, oh my God, I feel horrible from 6 a.m. to 7:30, but I used my tools. I'm excited to learn more tools to use, because I was kind of going to that mindset. I was meditating, punching a pillow, squeezing my husband. Like, the awareness was so there. I'm like, okay, I need to just keep this moving. Don't get stuck there. But you mentioned something earlier, interoception, or what you call soul speak. So when people are learning to develop this awareness, how do you understand really what your unique body signals are? Like, how would you approach that process?
That's a really good question. There's lots of ways to increase your interoception. And actually, ironically, mind processes, brain down processes like meditation can be helpful. There's something called MABT where you combine meditation and touch, and that can really help to increase your sensations in your body. Now, if you're trying to figure out what is this sensation, what does it mean, that's more of a plotting a long time. So if, for example, if you feel nauseous, and you kind of take note, okay, I'm feeling nauseous today. What's going on in my life, in my environment? Why might I be feeling nauseous? And of course, there's lots of reasons why someone might feel nauseous. They could have the flu. They could have eaten something that's inflammatory, or they could be having a stress response. So take note of what's going on. And then you start to see patterns in you. Oh, my chest feels tight. I just got an email from a friend that sent me into a tailspin, whatever it is. So those are the types of ways in which we start to sort of see patterns in what we do. It's what Deb Dana, who is a polyvagal expert, would call your home away from home, meaning when you're not in calm, where do you tend to go? Where does your nervous system tend to take you? And for some people, it's going to be constriction and more of a freeze type response where they feel like they can't breathe and they feel really contracted forward, right? And so if you find yourself with your shoulders forward, is that your go-to, one of your symptoms and signals that you are in a stress response? Do you start to blame people for everything, or do you start to self-criticize and blame yourself for everything? Those are different things that you can start to pay attention to. You can look at it from a physical perspective, an emotional perspective, a social perspective. Do you want to be more social or less social? Do you hate everybody, or do you think everybody hates you? Right? And those are various ways in which you can start to plot what you tend to gravitate towards when you are feeling stressed.
Deb Dana's amazing. She was on episode 284 of Mind Love for anyone interested in touching on that. But I do have what I was noticing. I told you it was like this pit right below my sternum. And it was like this tightness, but also almost felt like I could throw up, but not quite a nausea. It was so weird. But I know that my reaction is to blame people. And so I know that well enough that I don't let it happen anymore, but I'll be like sitting there like stupid legislators with daylight savings time and why didn't my husband do this? Like that's the internal story. And so then there's the observer in the back being like, calm down, Melissa. This is just your mechanism. It's nobody's fault right now. Time is an illusion. This is just the situation that we're dealing with. But it's just so funny. Like the awareness can be comical because like before I'd just be like going on about my day and just think it was somebody else's fault. And now I'm like, what are you even doing inside? You're making this so much harder than it has to be.
Yeah, I call that a stress language. So you're discovering your stress language. And it's really great to understand your partner's stress language as well, because, and I think it sounds like your husband may have figured out your stress language. He sounds like a savvy guy. Once you know your stress language and your partner's stress language, it's kind of like a love language. It helps the relationship because you can go, oh, Melissa's going into that blame thing. She must need a little extra love. She's feeling a little extra stressed out today. How can I help? Kind of thing. And that's when he'll come over and give you a hug.
Yeah, it's funny. He'll like talk me up and then I notice like he needs his own processing time from that. Like I can tell he won't like say anything, but I can just tell he'll be like muttering stuff under his breath and there'll be like 15 minutes of like I've passed it on to him. So then I have to like give him extra love and then we both hug and dissipate it. It's a whole process, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about how a lot of people have cut off that communication with their body. And some people do it unintentionally, kind of like I did. It was like my survival mechanism. But there's other ways that people sort of just ignore that over and over again. It's like they don't have another outlet. And it's not necessarily like this traumatic, I need to cut this off for my survival, but it's just like, I need to cut this off because I have toddlers to deal with or work to deal with, or I don't have time for this, or I don't have the tools. And you tell the story of Houdini as an illustration of the consequences of ignoring our body's messages. And I just thought that would be a fun story to share.
The Houdini story. Houdini was that magician, and he put himself into positions in which he basically had to ignore his body, right? Hanging upside down by his ankles in a bucket of water, and he had to escape. The master of that. And he did it so wonderfully. And what happened, I forget what year it was. I'd have to reread that section in my book, but there was a year where Houdini was feeling a lot of pain in his body. And as he was accustomed to ignoring his soul speak, his interoception, he just kept ignoring the pain. Eventually, he was told to go to the doctor, and he did. And it turns out he had appendicitis. And the doctor said, you need an emergency surgery to remove your appendix. And it needs to happen today. And he said, can't happen today. I have a show to do and the show must go on. And so the performer that he was, as a lot of us are performing in life and ignoring our bodies, that's what he did. He got on stage and he ignored the pain. I think he had a fever as well. And he performed that day instead of getting emergency surgery. And the story varies. Some people say that in the middle of the show, he passed out, and some people say he got through the show and passed out. But either way, he performed, he passed out, he was taken to the hospital, and a couple of days later, he died because of a ruptured appendix. And I guess the moral of that story is we can't really ignore our bodies the way that we sometimes feel that we need to. It's ultimately will be our demise. And we need to really connect with what's going on and listen to what our bodies are saying, whether it's a whisper or a scream.
That's wild. I always thought he died because of his magic trick or whatever. Maybe that was a different magician, like drowned himself or something.
Oh, that might have been. I wonder who that was. Yeah.
What do you say to someone who begins to tune into their soul speak, but it's too overwhelming?
I say take baby steps. So I worked with some people who exercise can be almost overwhelming for them because exercise gets you in touch with your body. And so I tell them, back off a little bit, do really small incremental exercise routines that are gentle and slow, maybe play some really happy music. And that can help you slowly integrate your soul speak with what's going on in your life. And it's not maybe the right time for everybody, right? And so if you are feeling like you want to reconnect with your body and you know that that's where you want to go, but you feel like it's too much, I would reach out to a somatic practitioner. I would reach out to a therapist, a psychotherapist. Make sure you're doing it with somebody who understands what you're going through and understands trauma.
You also talk about something called the stillness seesaw.
Hmm.
What do we need to know about that? You also talk about something called the stillness seesaw. What do we need to know about that?
I think to explain the stillness seesaw, I talk about the stillness seesaw as another miscommunication between the brain and the body. I talk about the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight flight nervous system, as your movement system, because again, that's what gives you alertness. Now, when we have too much movement system, it feels more frenetic and frantic and fast paced, right? And that's not necessarily an outward experience. People can't look at you and say, oh, you're in fight flight. It's the pace of your heart. It's the pace of your breath. It's the ping ponging of your thoughts, right? That's the frenetic piece. So that is the movement system, that sympathetic nervous system. What I call the stillness system is your parasympathetic nervous system, because that is where you go into calm and it's fairly still, right? So your thoughts are going to be less agitated and you're going to feel more still in your body. Now you can be moving around and be in a calm state. You can be walking with a friend, you can be at a cafe, whatever it is, you can still be in that state and be still. What really intrigued me when I was looking at Dr. Stephen Porges, who created the polyvagal theory, his theory states that the vagus nerve, which is the main part of our calming nervous system, has two branches. And one branch, the ventral branch, is our calming nervous system. And the other branch, the dorsal branch, is where we go into freeze, which is a collapse and it's a shutting down, if you will. And all animals go do this, humans included. And I was fascinated by this idea that the same anatomical nerve within our body had these two very distinct experiences happening. So you've got calm and freeze coming from the same place in your body, your vagus nerve. And I found that so fascinating. And I started to really think about that. Like, why would that be? And what is it about those two systems that, besides the anatomy, are similar? And it's this idea that there's a lack of movement, right? So we have that stillness that we try to get and attain when we're meditating. It's a yummy stillness. It has vitality and vibrancy to it, but it's still. The freeze stillness is not so yummy. It's more immobilized, right? But that vagus nerve has that one thing in common between calm and freeze, is this lack of movement. So that's why I call it the stillness system. What the stillness seesaw is one of those communication glitches where someone might think that they are going into a relaxed state and they find themselves actually heading more into a freeze state. It's like unraveling instead of unwinding. And what I find is that people who have trouble slowing down in life, those overachievers, the push people, they're actually trying to avoid stillness entirely. And I think what we need to be able to do is discern the difference between calm and collapsed. And it seems really odd, but I think as humans, we have a hard time doing that. And people have a hard time embracing good stuff, right? Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy. I call it the stillness seesaw.
That's interesting. I do notice under extreme stress, most of the time. It's like I shut down, like I don't feel anything. And it serves me well now. I don't think it always did. I'd just be like, oh, let's just ignore everything. And I would make my downward spiral even further. Now I'm like, okay, I just have to make some logical choices and then I'll like feel it later. Except for when I was pregnant, I had a whole nervous breakdown when I was about to be well, it was like a panic attack. I was it was my due date. And then the biggest storm in the history of my town rolled in, and I was on a mountain and I was expecting a home birth and I had to go down the hill and get an Airbnb for 12 days. And then I came back up when the roads opened. Long story short.
I'm so sorry.
Delivered my baby at home 1 minute before my midwife arrived. It was a whole thing. But after that one moment of the storm coming in and realizing I had to pack up everything and I might not have a home birth, that was like the most stressful 3 hours of maybe my whole life.
Yeah,
I like, felt it all. I didn't shut down, maybe because of the pregnancy hormones. And I was like, oh, this is why I kind of just detach a little bit when bad things are happening.
Yeah, no, that's appropriate stress.
So what else can we do to build our toolboxes? We've covered that we need to take care of ourselves like we would a toddler, all the basics, breathe, move, stretch, eat, feel. Then what?
What I love about the body up tools, the somatic tools, which is where we can go next, is that they give the brain new data points. So we talked about how the brain is going on past information. But when we learn to speak to our body, we are giving new information to the brain. We are creating new data points, essentially. So that's how you build your capacity, is you learn the fluency of your body and then you learn to speak to your body. It's how you get unstuck, really. Going back to the polyvagal theory, Dr. Stephen Porges talks about the social engagement system. And it's not just the vagus nerve. A lot of people just talk about the vagus nerve, but he talks about 4 other cranial nerves that interconnect with the vagus nerve. And they're really easy to tap into, and you can use them as portals to the vagus nerve. So one of those cranial nerves is your trigeminal nerve. So for example, your trigeminal nerve feeds your jaw, your TMJ. So you can massage your TMJ, and that slow circular massage, you just use a couple of fingers right on your jawbone and you do a circular massage on your TMJ. That is a way of speaking to your body and asking your body to send a message up to the brain to say, actually, we're okay right now. There's no threat. And that's going to help you get out of that survival mode pattern. And so the TMJ massage sends a message to the trigeminal nerve, which then talks to the vagus nerve. And you've got this nice little communication happening all the way up to the brain. And that has really been a game changer for me, is learning how to talk to my body through those cranial nerves. Another one you might have heard of is humming. So when you hum, you're helping your vagal tone. And what you're doing is you're vibrating another cranial nerve that is part of the social engagement system. And gargling is the same thing. It's the same nerve. You can massage your sternocleidomastoid, which is a muscle in your neck. There's a lot of connection between neck pain and stress. And it turns out that 2 muscles in your neck are innervated by cranial nerve 11, which is also one of those gateway cranial nerves that goes into the vagus nerve and talks to the vagus nerve. So if you massage your sternocleidomastoid, which is innervated by this cranial nerve 11, you're talking to your vagus nerve.
I feel like craniosacral therapy would be really helpful for this. I had never even heard what it was. Was that a good awe or a bad awe?
That was a good awe. That was a good awe.
I had never even really paid attention to it. And then I've gotten 3 hits on it this week alone. My cousin was like, I just got this done. You need to do this. And then somebody else mentioned it. And then I all of a sudden got a text message from a masseuse that I never booked with, but texted one time last year and was like, I'm in town. All right, do you need anything? And I click her menu. The very first thing is craniosacral therapy. Now we're talking about this. It's been like 3 days.
The universe is talking to you. Yeah.
Clearly I need this done. Plus my business coach was actually telling me about that massaging there, but he was giving it for a different reason. He was saying how so many people have nerves around, whether it's sales calls or whatever you need to do for your business. It's like we hold so much emotion and pain in our muscles. And he was just saying this is one of the things he does before calls. And so I've been practicing it. So everything is coming together right now.
It's all coming together. Yes. Yeah. The other thing about the jaw too is that for women, jaw tension is related to pelvic floor tension. So after having a baby, it's a good thing to release the jaw as well.
Oh, my pelvic floor needs some work. I am an avid yogi. And I need to go to classes now that have loud music, because just any open hip thing, when I close the hips, it's just the most embarrassing queef you've ever heard. I need to get these weights or something. It happened in yoga the other day, and it was just like over and over again. I was like trying to release it, and everyone was like, just being cool about it. Thank God it was a class of like 3 other older women. And I was just like, all right, cool.
They've all been there.
Let's just move on. I'm not going to explain. We'll just deal with it later. But you mentioned something earlier when I talked about talking myself out of my shame spiral. And you talk about not stressing about de-stressing. What do we need to know? Because I know that so many people, they don't even realize that sometimes their added awareness brings extra stress, as it did with me for a hot second. So what should we do there?
I think there's an intensity to dealing with stress that brings about more stress. And we're just so programmed to just, when we find something, to just go all in. And what ends up happening is you add your self-care to your to-do list and you don't get to it. And then you get stressed, right? So now your self-care is stressing you out. That's why I like some of these tools that I teach in the book. Most of them are about 30 seconds long. So finding things that work for you and bringing them into your life, but not making a big deal out of it, really sort of stepping back and not being so intense about your self-care, your exercise, the way you approach your food and nutrition. People get really hyper intense about prepping food and what they're eating. And, it's really important to eat healthy. But when you bring in that stress component to managing your food, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're increasing your cortisol with the stress, which is going to decrease your ability to digest and process fat. And it's going to dysregulate your sugar and make you insulin insensitive. So we have to really be careful about how we approach this and not go into old patterns. And I think of approaching a de-stressing program as feeding a little baby bird with like a little dropper. And we're just going to do little bits at a time. For one thing, you want to find out if a tool works for you. So that jaw release that I gave you earlier, that's going to work for 90% of the people, but there's going to be some people where it doesn't work. Maybe it makes them more anxious, or maybe it doesn't do anything. So you have to kind of figure out what tool works for you. And then just take one tool. Just let's say it's the jaw thing. Let's say that works for you. Jaw massage is great. You're going to add it to your day. So you do it, maybe habit stack it after you brush your teeth. And it literally takes 30 seconds. So you brush your teeth and then you do that. And then you go on with your day. And maybe you do that for a week. And then you're going to add another tool, maybe if you feel like you need more. If you don't feel like you need more, don't add another tool. If you think that's doing it for you, great. If you feel like you need more, maybe you do something at night. Maybe there's plenty of really short tools in the book, and maybe you pick another one and you do it before bed and see if it helps you sleep. And so you just incrementally and gently and with a whole lot of self-compassion start adding this into your life with curiosity too, right? Well, is this helping me or is it not? Is it making me worse? Is it making me better? What's it doing? Right? Because just because it helps your girlfriend is not going to mean it's going to help you, right? So you've got to figure it out. You've got to listen to what your body is telling you. So that's how I would approach it. And that's why I say don't stress about de-stressing, because it's such a human tendency to want to go big, to want to do it as an all in intensely. And that can be stressful. because inevitably you're not going to be able to be consistent. And then you're going to shame yourself and it's all going to fall apart. And so let's just take it back a step and just go really slowly. Just do this one little bit at a time and see if just adding that little bit to your life is going to give you a little bit more bandwidth. And you're going to feel like, oh, I can handle that email a little better. I can handle that difficult boss, or I can handle the traffic. I can, whatever it is. And then hopefully you'll feel like you can be more fluid. So if you are stuck on a mountain during a terrible storm and you're pregnant, you will have a stress response, but you'll feel like you can go back when that crisis is over and not get stuck there.
Kind of like how I went back to Butcher Box customer support after I managed to reach out during my stress response over the weekend. Wasn't super nice. I was like, that was not me. And I went back, opened chat support and was like, hey, I don't know if you have my chat history, but I was just a little bit aggravated. And send it to the bot. I was like, just log this in my account. I'm so sorry. But I think it's so important to emphasize what you said about how we are finding our toolbox and things do work for a percentage of people. Because so often, what I saw a lot in my family and I are very, very different. My family, cousins, aunts, and uncles, they're like, oh, there's a pill for that? Great, let's take it. Oh, mindfulness, that seems like a scam. It's like they try one thing one time, don't even know if they're doing it right. And they're like, that didn't work nearly as much as Prozac. So not for me. So it's just play with the things, really notice the subtleties of what you're doing. And for me, what has been one of the most helpful things is to dwell on the positive effects of whatever I'm trying to implement. Because so often we're dwelling on the stories of the negative side, this caused me stress, let me blame other people, whatever we're doing to add to the story. And maybe we meditate, maybe we feel better, but we just move on. So the next time we're in that super stressful moment, we're not craving the meditation. That's what gets me to crave these things, is because I sit there afterwards and I'm like, okay, what feels different now? I felt it in my chest before, and now what do I feel there? How does my mind feel? What are the stories I'm telling myself? Oh, euphoria. And I really always bring it back to euphoria, because then when I'm tired now, I'm not other than daylight savings time cranky, I'm usually not cranky. I'm I need a meditation, a 20-minute meditation is more restful than a nap. And it's I can feel that oh, yes. So I highly encourage people to really just dwell on the positive effects of what they're going through. And so I love leaving people with one actionable thing, because we cover a lot of things. It might be overwhelming, and so it all slips out the window. So I like to leave people with one thing to practice this, or to really ground it into the reality. So if we were going to give them one piece of homework, whether it's something to think about or something to do, what would that be?
I think one of the biggest miscommunications between the brain and body that happen when we're rushing. And I would say, if you really want homework, slow down, feel your feet on the floor while you're walking, and try to slow your breathing down, which involves a longer exhalation than your inhalation. And just slowing your pace down and lengthening your exhalation will send a message up to the brain that whatever you're rushing towards is not a threat. You are not going into a boxing ring, and it will allow you to enjoy whatever it is that you're heading towards.
Well, thank you so much for your research in this area. We've talked a lot about stress, but there are still so many unique aspects to it in this conversation. So for listeners who are interested in connecting with you or learning more about your book, where's the best place for them to go?
I have a company called Body Insight. So bodyinsight.com is my website. I have workshops there, and they can sign up for my newsletter to hear about everything that I'm doing. I'm on Instagram, Body Insight Inc., and lots of tools and videos on stuff that we've talked about here and some other stuff. And the book is called Settled: How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. And that's available wherever books are available online.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/335. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of homework. We just talked about one, which I will remind you of. And that one is all about grounding. It's really coming back into your body when you're triggered. This can happen whether you're triggered, like you're upset when somebody's angry at you, or vice versa. You're angry at somebody. Whenever those big, less comfortable, less positive feeling emotions rise up, coming back into our bodies is a really amazing thing to do, because what we often do is we strengthen the story that we're telling ourselves. We're strengthening the upset in doing that. So we get into our heads, we replay what happened, we think about how it's unfair, we start looking at facets of it that we didn't even see at first, and we get ourselves even more worked up. Coming back into your body mitigates a lot of that. And so that can be done by just watching your feet on the floor. I like to actually sit down in the grass or on the earth and put my hands down. There's something about that energy that really calms me. I've heard of people even eating root vegetables, so take that as you will. I'm up for anything because we also know that the mind is very powerful. So if you believe something works, it has like a 60% chance of having some sort of effect. So whatever works for you, what you feel called to do. And tuning into those bodily sensations is probably the most powerful part of that, because that's when you become aware of your body's responses. And instead of looking at it like, oh my God, anxiety, panic attack that feels like it's overcoming you, it's like, oh, my heart's beating faster. Oh, my breath is speeding up. And I'm not saying that works every single time, but it does help. It's one of the proven systems of being able to emotionally regulate ourselves and self-soothe. So let me know how that goes. The other part of this is a more holistic approach. And by holistic, I mean your whole life. What is your main driver for waking up in the morning? What is your big focus in life? If you don't have that, if you don't have something that lights you up, that makes you feel purposeful, then all of those little things are going to feel so much bigger than they would otherwise. You start to focus on what other people are doing and how they don't fit into your picture because it's the only picture you have. But when you know that you are waking up every day, living into something greater than you, and it doesn't have to be some big business you're starting, it could be the way that you lead your family. It could be the way that you show up in your current job as a third grade teacher. Whatever it is, it's connecting your purpose to that thing. So if you need help doing that, this is the very last week to sign up for Soul Strength Activation. It is going to be such an incredible program. I have 6 people already in this group that are amazing energy, that are all also hoping to connect with their soul tribe, to feel like they're a part of something. And so we're going to be doing this together. And so this is for people who know they're meant for something more and they can't quite pin that down, or they can't quite get themselves to actually take action on it. It doesn't mean you need to quit your job and start something new at all. It's about finding that purpose in every day within yourself. And that's going to look differently for everybody in the group. It's going to be unique to you. And that's what we're figuring out: who you are, why you came here, what your unique gifts are, and how to live into those every single day and trust yourself to make whatever big moves are needed for you to be in your highest self. So if that sounds interesting to you, please reach out to me. Send me an email at melissa@mindlove.com. You can also go to Instagram @mindlovemelissa and read more about it there. I've been posting about it for the last couple of weeks, and I would absolutely love to see you in there. There's payment plans available, trying to make it accessible to as many people as possible. So please reach out to me if this is calling to you. All of my amazing sponsors are at mindlove.com/sponsors. And all of the amazing discount codes that I share here are there as well. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.